family mode.
Hello, welcome to RIA Match's webinar, How to Begin a Dialogue with Prospective Matches. I'm Mary Ann Buchanan, founder and CEO of RIA Match. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a great number in attendance, and what I want to do is first cover some quick housekeeping rules for the group. Let's do an audio check. Raise your hand if you can hear me. Do you see where you can raise your hand in the right panel there? Let's see. Okay, go ahead and see if you can raise your hands. Okay, great. Sarah, William, yep, I see. We've got Paul, good deal. A couple of other hands raised. Liz, Joseph, great. John, good deal. Frank, Drew, good. We've got our hands raised, that's great. Okay. We'll also, you are on mute, so you don't have to worry about that. We'll let you know, we want to let you know that the webinar is being recorded, and it'll be up on the RIA Match site by tomorrow. So we are aware of a number of people who were unable to join us today, so be sure and let your colleagues know that the session's recorded, and they can listen to it at their convenience. Okay, how will we take questions? When you have a question, put it in the chat box in the panel to the right. When the question comes to mind, go ahead and put it in the question box then, even though we're going to answer them at the end. Sometimes it's just helpful when it comes to mind, put it in there, and we will go from there. So let's go ahead and test our chat boxes. Everybody type into your chat box the city you're calling from. All right. There we go. Denver, Colorado. Stanford, Connecticut. Delray Beach, Santa Fe, Boston. Newton, Mass. Nashville, Tennessee. Great. We've got callers from all over the United States. This is wonderful. Now, we'll be conducting polling during the webinar, and we'll share the results with you as we go along. And that's actually very insightful. We've done this before. So we're done with housekeeping. That's great. What I'd like to do with you is share with you the results of the questions you answered when you registered for the webinar. So what types of firms are participating in today's webinar? 15% of you are early solo practitioners. 27 mature solo practitioners. Just under a quarter, 24% of you are early ensemble practices, 19% mature ensemble practices or firms, and 15% of you are market dominators. Among those of us gathered today, 54% of you have added advisors to your practice, and just under 30% have completed a merger or acquisition. And I find these numbers very interesting, as more than half of you have completed negotiations with a potential partner. So you've experienced what the successes and the challenges of inorganic growth are. So thank you very much for coming. We trust you'll gain valuable information for your future negotiations. Just a reminder, we had sent an email out yesterday to print out the webinar worksheet. If by chance you haven't done that, pull that email up and just print it out. You'll have a chance to do that as we're going through here. If you, by chance, can't find your email or were late registering, the free worksheet is available in the RIA Match store. So you can go to riamatch.com, go to the little shopping cart, and you'll scroll through and you'll find it. But we hope you'll enjoy the webinar today. But very briefly, let me answer the question, what is RIA Match? RIA Match is a website that offers financial advisors solutions for succession planning and growth. The website matches financial advisors with other financial advisors and RIAs who want to buy, sell, merge, or join practices. The advisors and RIAs can search for free and pay to connect, anonymously and securely on our site. RIA Match is independently owned. Our mission is to create an efficient market for advisors and RIAs to partner their practices. The site is agnostic as to custodial platform. We created the playing field. We don't call the plays, and we do not benefit from them. It's a pure approach designed to serve all advisors, regardless of scale, scope, or experience. Our goal is to bring advisors the most efficient tools and excellent information so you can make the best decisions for the succession and growth of your practices. So let's get started. Now, whether you meet someone on RIA Match's site or at a conference or through a peer, it's important to have the tools to represent your firm and your interests during negotiations. It's important to have the tools to discover what other parties' true interests are and assess the viability of a good fit. How do you begin this dialogue? This is what we're going to discuss today. We're going to cover how to prepare for the most efficient discussions, effective discussions with potential matches. We're going to cover how to provide structure to fully explore the match. We will uncover objective means to refine and compare the qualities of matches. I'd like to welcome Lisette Smith and Tanya Rapacz, co-founders of the Partnership Resource. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your experiences and expertise with us. It'll be a great benefit for our advisor community. Lisette and Tanya are going to discuss how to approach negotiation preparation. They'll guide us through a case study from one of their own clients. Then we'll focus on our own worksheets and begin to work through the negotiation prep tools ourselves. We'll follow up with next steps and answer your questions. Tanya, you and Lisette were partners in an advisory firm. What is your background?
Hi, Miriam. Both Lisette and I have spent the majority of our careers in investment services. We met when we were both working for a family office in Boston providing financial planning. We left that firm to start our own firm in 2000. We're both certified financial planners. After doing that for a few years, we got the so-called urge to merge, motivated by perhaps some of the same issues that are motivating some of the people who are online right now. We wanted a higher profile, more leverage, all the benefits of being a larger firm. So we weren't able to start and complete a merger. Then a few years later, for a couple of different reasons, we transitioned our shares out of that practice. During our sale, we undertook the business negotiations ourselves, working out the details of the non-compete, the consulting arrangement, all the terms. Then we hired a lawyer to finish up the deal, and suddenly things got a lot more contentious and a lot more expensive. And of course, since we were in the industry, we were keeping in touch with other people, and we witnessed some spectacular breakups and failed successions. And all these experiences have led us to be interested in alternative dispute resolution and negotiation. Lisette went straight into the study of alternative dispute resolution after we sold our firm because she had some experience as a FINRA arbitrator and wanted to look at it from the academic point of view. We kept in touch, and we encouraged me to also study conflict resolution. And in that study, we discovered that there was not much research on business partnerships after formation. So we decided to really focus on research and consulting to business partners, especially RIAs, which led to the formation of our business, the Partnership Resource.
That's awesome. Lisette, did you want to weigh in on that? I mean, obviously, it sounds like your experience led to an interest in conflict resolution and working with FINRA. I mean, what are your thoughts? And thank you, Lisette, for joining us as well.
Thank you very much. I think what I saw once I started to learn from an academic perspective about negotiation and conflict resolution is how our negotiations kind of did fit within a framework, but also maybe how we could have done them more efficiently and less stressfully, frankly. You know, going through it for the first time, and I know a lot of people on the call have had mergers, but if you're, the first time you do it, if you're not familiar with the process, it can be really daunting, especially when you're also running a practice. So we just saw how well having a structure could have helped us and could help others.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Well, we're thrilled to have you both with us today and telling us about the partnership resources. Your backgrounds are perfect for what we need. What we'd like to do is start with our first polling question. And I'm going to launch it here. And here we go. We'll give you some time, about 20 or 30 seconds, to answer the question, how long does a typical transaction take to complete? 4 to 6 months, 9 to 12 months, or more than 12 months? Okay, we'll give you another 10 seconds. Okay, we're going to close the poll now. Another 3 seconds just because I want to do that. Okay, there we go. So what I want to do is share with you the results of the poll. What do the people in our audience think? So 9% of you chose 4 to 6 months, 48% 9 to 12 months, and 43% more than 12 months. 79% of you voted. So this is interesting. Most of you, so obviously 4 to 6 months, is on the shorter end, and you guys see that. Lisette, what is this? What are your thoughts on the poll results?
Well, in the poll, the correct answer was really B, 9 to 12 months, and that's actually a number from the recent Mark Hurley white paper on the brave new world of wealth management. But I'm actually, he set that up as kind of what's the minimum amount of time that it would take, so I'm kind of willing to give credit to those that said more than 12 months, and I think it might even reflect the experience of people in the audience, because part of why we take the approach we do is that these can be very long the transactions can take a long time, and one of the other elements that comes out of this is that there seems to be evidence that the longer transactions stretch out, the less likely they are to be completed, so it really can mean a big time commitment without a positive result in some cases.
Right. And also it's when you determine you've started negotiations, if you're in a study group with someone and you've been in a study group with them for years, I can see how even in 6 months you could do it because you already know their practice and you have a lot of information on them. But I think this is interesting feedback. So what does this mean for the use of conflict resolution techniques in helping advisors contemplate a merger or succession?
Well, when we look at information like this, and what we're really looking to do is use the techniques to improve the chances that transactions will be completed successfully. So what we want to avoid is that people get pretty far down a planning or implementation and far into their discussions and then realize this isn't going to work. And I think we've had cases where people are on their second or third succession plan or attempt to merge, and there's really some fatigue with that because you just can't keep that energy level.
Right.
So what we've done is integrated the tools, the negotiation tools that we learned at the Harvard Negotiation Project. Specifically, there are a 7-element negotiation structure, which can be used and is used throughout negotiations, but I think is specifically relevant in the IRA world because it really tries to integrate both the business and relationship issues, which are so important. And as you can see, if you download the worksheet, the 7 elements that we deal with are objectives, interests, options, communication, then relationship, and looking at objective standards and your alternatives. So that structure, just quickly to talk about our approach overall, there are other ways that we can use that structure to facilitate partners who are in a negotiation, and also within a firm that's going through a transition, maybe as part of a negotiation, there can be contentious issues that need to be discussed. But the approach is really that you know your business better than anyone, and having the guidance and structure can be helpful, but people you really need to take ownership of your deal, or it's just not likely to succeed. So if you take a lot of advice, or you feel coerced, like you need to get this deal done under certain circumstances, that's what can end up breaking down. In the end, people just won't go through with it. So what's important is that we don't impose a solution. It's a very facilitative approach, and it's more helping people find their own solution.
Right, working toward a common goal.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just really to be more successful and not waste that time.
Sure, sure. Tanya, can you take us through the case study?
Sure. Here's the case study slide.
And also, I'm getting some feedback. If you all could lean into your mic. I see the some of our audience is having difficulty hearing you.
Okay, thank you for letting us know that.
Sure, sure.
Okay.
And thank you, audience, for giving me that feedback as well.
So we've put together a case study. It's actually a little bit of a composite of some situations, and also it's been simplified a little bit so that we can use it to go through the worksheet in the time allowed. But hopefully everyone listening can relate to this partnership or know partnerships like this. So we have two partners in business together for 22 years. They're both in their early 60s. They have a thriving and successful local practice that they've been building, step by step over time through referrals. They are very proud of their client base, and truth be told, they are a little skeptical that anyone will serve their clients as well as they do. But nevertheless, one of the partners wants to retire. They want to move to a warmer climate with their spouse and enjoy the rest of their years. The other partner has some health issues and also wants to give a significant gift to their son. So they're maybe a little bit more feeling the time pressure of engaging in the sale. They also have a staff person who's been with the firm for 15 years, and this person, they feel very strongly about this person, and hopefully a lot of you have staff people like this, knows all the clients know them. They're the people in the organization who knows who likes coffee and who likes tea.
Right.
They know the names of all the children. Right. So
That matters a ton. Yeah.
Right. Rich in institutional knowledge. And so in our case study, the partners have gotten together to work through what they want to get out of the transaction, and now they're ready to start meeting with potential matches. So for the rest of the presentation, we're going to be using that worksheet.
Okay.
And so if you don't happen to have it in front of you, it's okay, because for the rest of the worksheet, or for the rest of the presentation, we'll be describing the element that Lisette already brought up from the negotiation process. And then we cut and pasted a snippet out of our worksheet where we took this particular case and applied that principle to it as a sample or as an example to see how to generate the information you would need to fill out the worksheet.
Okay, great. That's very helpful.
And you can look at this worksheet as sort of as you fill out the worksheet, you're going to be needing to communicate a lot with the other party. So you can kind of look at this as the beginning of trust building and confidence building with the other party, and really a dress rehearsal for the working relationship. And you'll see as you look at the worksheet kind of blown up that there's a side-by-side aspect to it for many of the elements, so you can sort of see like what we want and what they want and kind of see how that is lining up.
Very good, very good. So, Lisette, what are the objectives section? Do you want to start there?
Right. So this is kind of, a pretty straightforward start. What you're looking for when you enter your objective is your overall goal for this particular prospective match. And if it's early in the discussion, you may be flexible here. If you're looking for succession as a long-term goal, you may be thinking you want to bring someone in, but you may find that merging the firm is a good fit. So there can be some flexibility, but it is good to be as specific as you can be. Actually, you can see in our case example, actually the next slide has a case example.
There we go, sorry. Thank you.
That we've described this, in this case, that they're looking for a buyer for their firm. The ideal buyer will have young principals, similar investment and financial planning philosophy, high client service orientation, no compliance issues, and a similar fee structure. And so those are all kind of high-level goals. It's really, I mean, you could look at it as a wish list because it's likely to get reality tested as you look at the people that are out there as buyers. But you want to start with the broad view, and then for each of these you kind of drill down both as the worksheet progresses and as the discussions progress. But you want to start with what your ideal objectives are.
Sure. No, that makes sense. That's very helpful. Okay, we're going to break here for a second, launch our next polling question. And once again, we're getting a little bit of a couple people saying it's hard to hear, so we'll all try to lean into our microphones a little bit more. But let's go ahead and launch our next question here. Okay, I've launched the poll. Well, again, we'll give you about 40 seconds to respond. According to research, which approach to negotiation leads to the best results? Accommodating, agree to as many items as possible in order to maintain the relationship. Demanding, refuse to back down or compromise on any substantive position. Collaborating, viewing the other party as a partner against a common problem. So, which one do we think is, well, boy, we've got 77% have voted, and good to have unison. We've got obviously a smart group here. I think that you will be glad to see the results of that one.
All right, so this is not the 101 class.
This is not the 101 class, no. So, Tanya, given those results, let me close that, hide that back out, 100% collaborating. What do people need to be thinking about as they fill out the interest section of their worksheet?
All right, well that's very impressive in terms of results. I mean, the research bears that out. I mean, seeing your counterpart as a partner makes a big difference in the outcome of the negotiation. The deals are more likely to be completed and with more satisfaction by both parties. And if there's to be an ongoing relationship, neither feels like they've been unfairly dealt with. There's no buyer's remorse or seller's remorse, which could be a material fact. I mean, a deal could be completed and signed, but if someone decides later that the deal doesn't work for them, there still could be a problem with eventual deal completion.
Right.
And I was going to say next that many people think of a good negotiator as being hard-nosed and never compromising, but as everyone in the audience knows, the research does not bear that out. So when you're preparing the interest section, this actually might be the most, the part of the worksheet where you would spend the most time thinking about what specific needs that you are hoping the transaction will meet, and then what really you want to get out of this. But at the same time, you really need to be thinking about what the other party is thinking, because if you can't come together, there's no deal. And it's helpful in this section to think about interests rather than positions. Those are terms that are widely used in negotiation.
Right.
If there's anyone that's not 100% familiar with how they're different, I'm going to give a quick anecdote to see if, to illustrate that a little bit better. A few years ago, there was a railway company that had decided for cost reasons and efficiency reasons that they needed their railroad workers to work a 12-hour shift, where they were currently working an 11-hour shift. They went to the union, and the union representatives told them, no, we won't work a 12-hour shift. In fact, we are demanding an 8-hour shift. It was a very contentious issue, and they weren't getting anywhere. And it was the kind of situation where if they weren't able to come to some agreement themselves, it was going to have to go to arbitration, and a likely result there would be, you want 8 hours, the other side wants 12 hours, let's say a 10-hour shift. But if that had happened, the railway workers were going to walk. So one of the negotiators asked the railway workers, well, why do you want an 8-hour shift? and they said, we need to bring our meals on the train with us, and we're sick of cold sandwiches and snacks. We want a hot meal. So that actually turned out to be the breakthrough in the negotiation. They ended up putting something to heat up meals in the engines, and they worked out a 12-hour shift.
Unbelievable. They just forgot to ask why.
Right. But in that case, the position, you know, we want an 8-hour shift is the position, but the we want hot food was the interest.
Right.
And when people negotiate, it's a lot easier to think about the positions than the interests. You know, they're usually more concrete and easier to look at, whereas with the interest, you need to dig a little deeper. But if you can dig a little deeper, you know, and obviously as that case illustrates, you were able to come up with something that everybody can agree to, an agreement is made, and it probably has really good sticking power.
Right, right. Very interesting, very interesting. Do you want, now we've got an example here. Did I not get that?
Yeah, let's look at the example.
So there we go. Should we look at this?
Yeah, let's look at this. So here we've tried to put some examples of what some high-level interest could be. I mean, obviously, after all this time of building a business that they're so proud of, they want to capture the value of that firm. They want to minimize the risk of any deal completion issues, obviously minimize taxes. But then they also have other goals that are not tangible financial goals, but may not really be less important to them. They want to feel good that they're leaving their clients in good hands.
Right.
That these are people who put their trust in them this whole time. And then also that employee that I described, they'd like to take care of her in some way. And then you look on the other side has their interests. You know, they want to increase their assets under management at a relatively low cost. They want to retain their clients for long term as the firm they're buying from does. And so as you start to look at your interests and their interests, you want to identify which ones work together and which ones are competing, because there might be some interests that line up, like the client retention. You know, in many deals, the final deal isn't finalized until a certain period of time has gone by, and you see how many clients have stuck with the new advisor. So client retention is an interest that both of them would have.
Right, right. So they start, do you suggest they sort of start discussing their common interest first, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right,
Lisette, oh, go ahead, sorry.
That's okay.
Lisette, how do you generate options that address the interests of both parties?
Okay, so once you have gone through and made a pass at thinking about what your interests are and trying to get to the interests, even early in the discussions, try to get to the interests of the other party, what you're looking for in options is how you might work together to meet your shared interests before you, again, kind of drill down on the specifics. And what's can be challenging about this is that you really don't want to evaluate each option. You want to just come up with as many options as you can and broadly explore the possibilities, which can be fun to do, but it can also be difficult. You know, people are used to, especially advisors, they're used to evaluating choices, but we kind of encourage you to look at it and even bring up things that might seem a little far-fetched, and keep it, you know, fairly broad, because there's going to be specifics about this that you will discuss later. But in our case study example, we look at the clip from the case study. The first option that we're talking about here, as far as meeting a joint interest, does focus, as Tanya was saying earlier, on the client retention aspect. So talking about getting more detail on investment implementation and reviewing sample plans, that seems to be a way to make sure that it would be a pretty smooth transition for clients and that it wouldn't be jarring for them to get kind of a whole new investment approach. And some of the other options listed here, even hiring the employee to add in client retention and potentially splitting a retention bonus with that employee, and even keeping on the partners and key staff. those are all options that are out there. I mean, there are implications to these options in that they are an expense to the buyer, so they're not without controversy. But it's kind of just what could we do to meet these interests,
Right.
and because you'll see that at this stage early on, some of the options are going to seem to benefit one party more than the other. But that's really okay, and that's bound to happen. And as you move forward in the negotiations, you can still use these if there's an opportunity to have kind of low-cost, high-value swaps during the negotiation, which might be a little bit beyond what we're discussing here. But you would see that as the negotiation develops, what options you generated early on can still be really useful.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. So moving on to the communication, so the next section of the worksheet. Tanya, why is this level of communication so important? We obviously know communication is important, but so talk to us about that.
Right. Actually, before I answer that question, can I ask if it seems like everyone can hear us now? Have you been getting more complaints?
The last one was a few minutes ago, so I think that we're okay. Just leaning into your mic, just so the audience knows, we tested this just before, and we tested it yesterday, and so we're just learning that it was a little bit more challenging today. So give us feedback. I can see your comments if you need. But go ahead. Thank you, Tanya.
I apologize, and I'm trying to make it as I'm right up here. So communication is the basis of negotiation. So at this point in the worksheet, you're thinking about what do you want to make sure you express to the other parties, but then you are actively listening back for what they are communicating to you. And luckily, because you're all advisors, you already have this skill. You're using the skill all the time with your clients for listening to what they say, what they don't say, and how they say it. And you also want to consider the overall tone that you are setting in this relationship in terms of how amicable and workable it would be. But also, as you're filling out the worksheet, you want to think about anything that you don't know that you need to know in order to move forward. And so for our sample case here, they've made a little bit of a list of the things that they want to know more about the potential buyers. And then they've also made a list of the things that they want, that they're going to have to disclose to the other side at some point. So they want to know more about the office space, the custody issues, the fees and philosophy. They're going to have to really drill down on terms that are widely used in the industry, like high service firm. That might mean one thing to one firm and another to the other firm. And then, compliance history is in there. They want to know what's been going on over on that side. In terms of the things that they want the other side to know, this does not necessarily mean things that you want to disclose or communicate to the other side in that first conversation. There may be some things that are material to the deal, but that you don't feel that you want to share with all of your round one contenders, and certainly you'll have to put that out there at some point, but hold it back. So in our particular case that we've chosen to illustrate, they want to execute documents within 6 months, which, as we've already seen, is pretty tight. So that you don't want to hold that back to the last minute, but you may not want to share some of those reasons with everyone until you're able to cut it down.
Right. Any other thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the reasons that you're doing this is to keep unpleasant surprises from torpedoing the deal at the last minute. So you're kind of walking, so there's a little bit of an art to it where there might be some things to disclose, but some things that you will have to disclose eventually, but you have to decide when and how that's the best done.
Very good, very good. Well, that's very helpful, very helpful. So we are going to launch another poll. All right, guys, here we go. And you should see the poll coming here in just a second. There's a little bit of a delay. There you go. According to a 2012 study, it was a study conducted by Professor Margaret Heffernan. as stated in her 2012 TED Talk, what percentage of European and American executives know about a business problem at their company that they are not bringing up because of the conflict they believe it would cause? 25%, 45%, 65%, or 85%? So this is really a conflict avoidance question. Well, again, we'll give you a couple more seconds here to answer. That's such a great question to ask, too. Okay, we've got our voting is in. I'm going to close the poll here, and I will share with you the answer. And it's coming. A little bit of a delay there, sorry. So you can see the results. 50% said 65% of the executives would have conflict avoidance, would avoid the conflict of bringing it to their staff. So Lisette, why don't you weigh in on these findings and see, what are your thoughts?
Well, really, the correct answer was 85%. So it's really a very high number of. And these could be different levels of conflict, but our point here was just to say that sooner or later disagreements are going to arise, but they could be very substantive and consequential. And if you're merging or bringing on a successor, you're not going to agree on everything. So, but the important thing is to just look at how you communicate and maybe think a little bit about your conflict styles, so that you can kind of have this trust to work through the contentious issues in a more successful way. I mean, to really get to that without sacrificing the relationship and without, sacrificing the deal or the succession plan.
Right, right. So let's talk about relationship. Let me hide this poll.
I was just going to say that conflicts, I'm sorry, it also kind of points out that all organizations have conflict, and that's not necessarily bad. The conflict can be really productive.
Right, right.
If the two of you always agree, you don't really need that other business partner.
Exactly, exactly. No, conflict is, it's not, is there a conflict, is there not conflict, it's how you deal with the conflict.
Exactly.
So, Lisette, how does relationship factor into the discussion?
So this is kind of my favorite part, and it's a part that we work on a lot. In the early discussions, which is kind of what we're talking about here, what you really want to be thinking about is more what type of relationship do you envision having with the other party? Because, in any event, this can be really critical. We see more conflict arise over relationship and kind of business cultural issues than specific business issues. They may trickle down to that, but the underlying issue has to do with relationship. And a lot of professionals also point to relationship issues as the reasons that deals fall apart. So in the early discussions, what you're looking for is what type of relationship you envision. In a merger, you're really going to have to look closely and deeply at this. So there's a lot of work we recommend you do as far as assessing the fit and motivations and conflict styles and work ethic. I mean, that can be very complex. In a buyout, there's not as much future interaction probably, but it's still really important. Kind of getting back to client retention, that you're able to get through it as smoothly and efficiently as possible, and to be able to have enough of a relationship that you can, if you're the seller, that you can speak well of the buyer to your clients. I mean, you are kind of handing them off to this person. So in our case example, when we look at the side-by-side what people are looking for, the seller specifically says that they want a short-term relationship with the buyer, and that's something that we'll want to see defined further. because we do see conflict, especially if sellers have been founders and they're very committed and identified with their firm, that they might want to hang around, to have a consulting relationship, have some kind of advisory relationship with the new firm, whereas the buyers are kind of thinking, transition and then thank you very much, and it's more finite. And during the negotiations, what we really encourage is for you to try to separate behaviors from underlying values and stay big picture. And what we mean by that, that's a little bit of a term of art, I guess, but it's really that, it's a stressful time. The transactions might not always bring out the best in people, and you want to be able to look past kind of behaviors that you might not want over the long term and look at, is this something that's going to meet both our interests? Is it enough that clients will be retained? So it can be stressful, especially in a buy-sell type of arrangement. But even in a merger, there's a lot to work through, and you kind of have to look at the longer-term implications versus kind of how people might behave.
Sure, and also if the seller wants to stay on for a couple of years, then you got to get through that period as well.
Yeah, and there are costs associated with that, and sometimes the acquiring firm does want some help initially, but there gets to be tension of there's been a purchase, so they do want to have the flexibility to take over that, and it varies. I mean, this is something we've seen come up, but sometimes people are happy to have the other person stay on, but it's more, are they both on board? Do those two things align?
Right, right. Okay, let's move down the worksheet to objective standards. Tanya, what are the objective standards and why are they important?
Right, so this is the part of the worksheet where you're kind of getting a little bit down to the brass tacks of the actual deal. Objective standards are external criteria that both parties agree are fair and objective. They give legitimacy to the deal and make sure that they ensure that the deal will be more likely to complete. They also prevent the cycle of some positional bargaining. So early on, it's good if you can focus on the criteria but not start talking about value. Just start talking about how things should be valued, what is the standard, what is the basis.
Right.
And there can be this is an area where there could be some conflict. So in our case study.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
They discovered that early on that the buyer has definitely said that they, really let's start with the seller. The seller has, thinks very highly of their business, as most sellers would. So they're thinking that because their clients are so great and their revenue is so steady, that they want a high end of the multiple range that is often quoted. They're willing to look at comparable sales, but they already have a pretty high feeling of how much their business is worth. And at this point, it's okay for the buyer to say, well, actually, I'd rather have a more objective look and maybe get a third-party appraisal, something that goes beyond multiple revenue and maybe looks at cash flows over time. And this is also kind of it's a good time to not be so positional, to not say, well, that price is too high, I'd never pay a dime more than that, but to more say, let's see what a third party would say about that. That would help the negotiation and maybe avoid some of the needless conflict that might arise where, the natural tension between a buyer and a seller.
Right. That's a very helpful suggestion or structure to put in there. That's great.
And then in the case, as it was kind of illustrated at the beginning, the sellers are looking for a big down payment because at least one of them has a need for capital in the short term. But of course, the buyer wants to spread out a payout, so they're going to have to work that out, and keeping in mind the possibility that you need to make a deal that the buyer can actually complete.
Right, right. And that payment period is important. Are we ready to move on to alternatives?
Right, that's kind of the last element to discuss here.
Yes. So Lisette, how are they looking at alternatives other than sticking with the status quo?
So when we talk about alternatives, we're really looking at what are you going to do if this particular match doesn't work out. So in negotiation terms, you may have heard the term BATNA, which means your best alternative to the negotiating agreement. So, what will you do? What are other prospective matches? Or as you said, would you stick with the status quo? And in our example, it's one of the things is it is challenging to know what your the person you're dealing with, what their alternatives are. I mean, you can kind of speculate, and you might have a sense whether there are other firms that they might be looking at, but that's a very difficult thing to get to. In our case, one of the alternatives we do name is continuing as is, but we really want to give a lot of caveats about that. There's such a commitment of energy, and for those of you who have been through a merger or any kind of succession thing, we know how difficult it is to maintain focus on your practice and continue to grow your practice when you have this dual path of also looking to acquire someone or looking to to sell or merge. And it's really not sustainable to have a dual path. And to be honest, when we sold our firm, we kind of started out that way, saying, let's see how it goes and let's see what we find. And then you find that, you're talking to prospective clients and trying to continue to grow, and they expect you to be around. So it's hard to maintain your growth. And if you try to do that over the long term, you're not going to be able to grow, and the value of your firm's going to stagnate. And really, your clients just get older and get less appealing as a value. So there's kind of a warning about that, even though that is the default position for a lot of people. When you do, if you're in a position where you have more than 2 alternatives, one of the things that we recommend is to kind of look at your choices in a binary fashion. So in other words, compare 2 choices at a time. So if you're fortunate enough, especially in the early rounds, that you might have 3 or 4 choices to look at, but you need to winnow that down to take the negotiations to the next level. Have 2 choices, compare those directly, and then whoever is the more attractive of those moves to be against the next alternative, rather than to continue to try to compare them on a spreadsheet. Because it's kind of been shown to work when you're comparing several alternatives to make each decision more of a yes or no, and then move forward. Because you really can't continue down the path, with more than 2 prospective matches.
So it's kind of like March Madness. You have to work through the chart.
Yes, exactly. You have to put them in a bracket.
Yep.
And go through it that way, because it can, there are trade-offs, but when it comes down to it, you have to think, not just of the value, but the potential of having the deal come to fruition is really what we see.
Yep. Very good. Very good. Can you hear me? I think I wonder if I just lost them. They'll come back. I haven't, you can't hear me. Oh my. Let's see. Nope. How about now? Can you hear me now? No? Wowie. Sorry, guys. Let's go to the end. Let's go to the end here. And now I don't have the thing, so I can't, just lost them. Now, do you have the thing? Can you say, sorry, we've lost our sound? Okay. Sorry, we've lost our sound. Thank you for joining us. We made it right to the end. I don't have the polling information, the other information in front of me. Do you? Do you have the, can you say the... Okay, let's see. Go ahead and do that. Okay, yes, here we go. We had an audio problem. Can you hear me? There we go. I can hear. We've had an audio problem. I want to thank everyone for coming. We will take your questions. Let's see, I think maybe now people can hear me. I'm going to ask you one more time, if you don't mind, if you can hear me, if you would raise your hand. And I apologize for the audio. So if people can hear me, they would raise their hand. Great. Okay. Very good. Very good. Thank you very much. So what we wanted to do was wrap it up here. I wanted to thank Lisette Smith and Tanya Rapacz of the Partnership Resource. We wanted to see if you had any questions. So we'll take questions now in the question box. And also any questions that you have, if you put them in here, we will put them in the we'll put them on the site in our Q&A Ask the Panel section of the website.
And Marianne, while people are thinking of questions, do you want me to go over this last slide?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so the worksheet that you probably have already received, but it's always available in the RIA Match store for no cost. The Partnership Resource is also offering discounted engagements in the Match store. If you would like more help with filling out the form in terms of what your interests are, or just if the transaction you're contemplating is more complex, we offer both a 2-hour and a 4-hour look at your particular. It's very customized, and what we do is very customized to your particular transaction. And then feel free to email us or give us a call.
We have a question from Paul. He wants to know if you can get the slide emailed to him.
Yeah, of course, yes.
Okay, great. Paul, I've got your email, and we will take care of that. So Joseph, thank you very much. We got a great info feedback. I understand there's a little bit of an echo, but I apologize for that. At least we recovered from our mind losing my volume. This is why it's important to have that backup plan, right? Whether you're an advisory firm that loses power or a webinar that goes silent. Was that Tanya? Any other thoughts you want to share with us before you go?
I think we said what we wanted to, but thank you so much, Marianne.
Well, this has been very informative, just very valuable. Thank you very much. Thanks to our audience for taking the time to join us today to learn how to begin a dialogue with a prospective match. We wish you continued success. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Oops, no, that's